Alone at a wedding, she heard, "Pretend I'm your date," and everything changed. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The string lights shimmered above the wedding hall like 1,000 tiny promises. Laughter echoed through the air, glasses clinked, and violins played a melody too cheerful for what Lily Turner felt inside. She sat at the far corner table 12 alone. Her name card had been a mistake. She was not supposed to be seated so close to the couple. But the wedding planner shrugged, said there was no space left, and moved on. Lily's fingers tightened around her champagne flute as she watched her ex-boyfriend Brad, standing at the center of the dance floor. He looked dazzling in his tuxedo. His bride, Emily Lily's former co-worker, was radiant, glowing under the golden lights. Every cheer, every kiss, every awe from the crowd pierced Lily's chest a little deeper. She whispered under her breath, "I should not have come." Gunj. But before she could stand, a voice behind her said calmly, almost like a command, "Stay still. Pretend I am your date." Lily froze. The man leaned closer, the scent of cedar and something expensive brushing against her senses. "Excuse me?" she whispered. He smiled faintly, eyes locked on Brad across the room. "Your ex is walking this way. I assume you do not want him to see you like this." Lily turned, and for the first time, she saw him. A stranger in a sharp navy suit, dark hair slightly tousled, confident yet unreadable. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne and, without asking, set one in front of her. Then, in full view of everyone, he slipped his arm around her chair. Her heart skipped a beat. Brad's smile faltered as he spotted them. Lily's throat went dry. The stranger lifted his glass, tapped it gently against hers, and said with perfect calm, "To your resilience." The entire table turned to look. A murmur rippled through the guests. Someone whispered, "Who is he?" Someone else said, "She moved on fast." Lily could feel her pulse racing under her skin. She wanted to correct them, to explain, but the stranger's grip on her chair tightened slightly. He whispered, "If you tell the truth, you lose. Let them believe what they want." Her cheeks flushed. She was angry, confused, and yet strangely grateful. Brad approached their table, smiling stiffly. "Lily, I did not expect to see you here." She forced a smile. "Neither did I." The stranger extended his hand. "Daniel Hayes," he said smoothly. "Her date." Brad hesitated, then shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." Daniel's tone softened. "I am sorry. We were just about to leave. You understand how these weddings can get." He stood, offering his hand to Lily. And before she could protest, he led her away past the curious eyes, the whispers, the cameras flashing. When they stepped out onto the balcony, the cold night air hit her face. She spun to him, voice trembling. "Who are you, and why would you do that?" He looked at her for a long moment before replying, "Because you look like someone who forgot how to win." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city skyline glittered below them, the sound of music muffled behind the glass doors. Then, almost casually, he took out a business card and placed it in her palm. "Call me tomorrow. I have a proposal." She stared at the card, his name printed in silver letters. Daniel Hayes, CEO, Hayes Events. Her stomach dropped. The man who had just pretended to be her date was the man who owned the entire event. Lily looked up, stunned, but he was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd. The wind lifted her hair as she whispered to herself, "What kind of man does something like that?" And somewhere inside, a tiny spark, equal parts, anger, curiosity, and something she could not name, began to burn. The next morning, sunlight crept through the half-open blinds of Lily's small apartment. Her head still buzzed from the night before the wedding, the stranger, that impossible moment when he had said, "Pretend I am your date." Cunt. The business card lay on her kitchen table, right beside a mug of instant coffee. Daniel Hayes, CEO, Hayes Events. The same company whose logo had been printed on every decoration at the wedding. She whispered to herself, "Of course he owns it, because why would anything about last night be normal?" Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Miss Turner?" The voice was calm, low. "Daniel Hayes. I assume you found my card." Lily nearly spilled her coffee. Yes, I did." "Good. I believe I owe you an explanation," he said. Could you meet me at my office at 10? She hesitated. Her rent was due in 3 days. The last event company had just canceled her freelance contract. Pride told her to say no, but survival whispered otherwise. I will be there, she said softly. Hayes Events occupied the top floors of a glass tower in downtown New York. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, she stepped into a reception area more like a luxury hotel than a workplace. The receptionist greeted her politely. Mr. Hayes is expecting you? Lily followed the long corridor, the click of her shoes echoing against marble. Daniel stood by the window, city skyline glowing behind him. He turned when she entered, offering that same controlled smile. Miss Turner, he said, gesturing toward the chair opposite his desk. Thank you for coming. She sat, clutching her purse. You said you had an explanation? He nodded slowly. First, I should apologize. What I did last night was impulsive, perhaps unprofessional, but I noticed something how they looked at you, how you tried to stand tall even when humiliated. I could not ignore that. Her jaw tightened. So you decided to play the hero? To make a scene in front of everyone? Daniel's gaze did not waver. To change the story, yes. You deserved at least one person who saw your worth. Silence stretched between them. Then he placed a folder on the desk. I also have a proposal, he said. Strictly business. Lily blinked. A proposal? I need someone to act as my partner during a series of corporate events. 3 weeks, 5 appearances. You will be compensated generously. Think of it as a temporary arrangement, a contract relationship. She stared at him, stunned. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Exactly. My board insists I maintain a certain public image before an upcoming merger. It is ridiculous, but necessary. She laughed once, dryly. You cannot just hire an actress? I do not want an actress, Daniel replied. I want someone authentic, someone who does not care about my title. Lily leaned back, crossing her arms. You do not even know me. Maybe not, he said, but I trust my instincts. And my instinct says you can handle yourself in any room. She looked down at her worn shoes, then at the polished floor, reflecting his expensive suit. It was absurd. Yet the thought of being paid enough to cover her debts and the strange, unspoken connection she had felt last night made her heart beat uneven. What are the rules? She asked quietly. Daniel's lips curved slightly. Rule number 1, no real feelings. Rule number 2, complete confidentiality. Rule number 3, you can walk away anytime you wish. And your rule number 4? She challenged. He met her eyes. Do not lie to me, even when pretending. Her breath caught. The air between them shifted, heavy and electric. After a long silence, she said, Send me the contract. He stood, extending his hand. You will not regret it. She hesitated before shaking it. His grip was steady, warm, almost grounding. As she walked out of the office, her reflection in the glass caught her attention, still the same Lily Turner, but somehow different. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was destiny disguised as a business deal. Down on the street, wind lifted her hair, and she whispered to herself, What am I getting into this time? The elevator doors closed behind her, sealing the beginning of something that was never meant to be real. 3 days later, the contract arrived. It was printed on cream-colored paper, embossed with the gold logo of Hayes Events. The title on the first page read, Temporary Relationship Agreement. Lily sat at her kitchen table, staring at it as if it might catch fire. Her pen hovered over the signature line, but her mind kept circling the same thought. What am I doing? The agreement listed 5 rules, typed in sharp, deliberate words. No real romantic involvement. Appear at all scheduled events as Mr. Hayes' partner. Maintain discretion about the arrangement. No interference in each other's personal lives. Termination allowed by either party at any time. At the bottom, his signature was already there. Bold, confident, practiced. Daniel Hayes. She took a deep breath and signed. The next morning, a sleek black car waited outside her apartment building. The driver opened the door. Miss Turner, Mr. Hayes is expecting you. Lily stepped inside, heart pounding. The city slid by like a dream. When the car stopped in front of the Hayes Events headquarters, Daniel was already outside, talking to a stylist holding a tablet. He turned, offering that calm half-smile again. Good morning, Miss Turner. Ready to begin your crash course? She blinked. Crash course? He nodded toward the stylist. Before you attend an event with me, there are a few things to learn: how to stand, how to move, what to say when someone asks how we met. Lily raised an eyebrow. And what exactly is our love story? Daniel's mouth curved. We met at a wedding. You spilled champagne on me, and the rest is history. That is terrible, she said, laughing despite herself. Then it is believable, he replied. Inside the private dressing suite, clothes were lined up like art exhibits, dresses in satin and silk, shoes she could never afford to touch. The stylist, a sharp woman named Carla, studied Lily for a long moment. Natural beauty, she murmured. We will keep her real, just polished. For the next hour, Lily sat still as makeup brushes swept over her skin, as her hair was styled into soft curls. She barely recognized the reflection staring back at her, a woman who looked like she belonged to the world she had only ever watched from a distance. Daniel entered halfway through, adjusting his cufflinks. How does it feel? He asked. Like I am wearing someone else's life, she said quietly. He smiled. Then make it yours. That evening, their first event together was a charity gala at the Grand Metropolitan. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers and murmurs of old money. Cameras flashed, people laughed too loudly, and champagne flowed like water. Lily took Daniel's arm as instructed. His hand rested lightly on hers, steady but impersonal. You are doing fine, he whispered. Her voice trembled. I feel like I am walking into a trap. Every deal begins that way, he replied. They walked through the crowd, smiles perfectly rehearsed. The first few greetings were easy handshakes, polite laughter, nods. But then came the real test. A tall man in a navy tuxedo approached, grinning. Daniel Hayes, still making headlines. And this must be your mystery woman. Lily froze. Daniel's grip tightened slightly, subtle reassurance. This is Lily Turner, he said smoothly. She is the reason I survived last quarter's chaos. The man laughed. Ah, the muse behind the miracle. Well, she is stunning. Lily forced a smile. Thank you, sir. As they moved on, she exhaled sharply. Was that convincing? Daniel leaned closer. Convincing enough to start rumors. That is how this world works. People fill in the blanks you leave open. Later that night, after hours of small talk and flashing lights, they stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city. The noise faded behind the glass doors. Lily's heels ached. She leaned on the railing, staring at the skyline. Do you ever get tired of pretending? Daniel's voice was quiet. More often than I admit. She turned to him. Then why do it? Because sometimes, he said, pretending is the only way to survive long enough to make things real. Quote. Something in his tone made her stop breathing for a moment. She searched his face for a trace of sarcasm, but found none. Then he stepped back, regaining his calm composure. You did well tonight, better than I expected. She smiled faintly. Is that a compliment? It is a statement, he replied. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, expression unreadable. I have to take this. Wait here. He walked inside, leaving her alone with the sound of the wind. Through the glass, Lily saw him talking to a woman tall, elegant, clearly familiar with him. She placed a hand on his arm, laughing softly. Daniel's face remained professional, but the closeness between them made something sharp twist inside Lily's chest. Why do I care? She thought. It is not real. None of this is real. Still, when he returned a few minutes later, she could not hide the tension in her voice. You seem popular. He looked surprised. Jealous already? Not even close, she said, turning away. Just observing. He smiled faintly. Good. Keep observing. You will learn how this world works. She faced him again, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Maybe you should learn how to be honest. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then, for the first time, Daniel looked genuinely caught off guard. Maybe you are right, he said quietly. As they left the event, the car's reflection shimmered in the hotel lights. Lily watched him in the glass, composed, powerful, impossible to read. She realized something unsettling. Every rule in that contract had a line she was already tempted to cross. The night ended with her whispering to herself, I signed a deal with a stranger, and somehow, he already feels familiar. The driver started the car, and the city lights blurred into streaks of gold as they disappeared into the night. The following week passed in a blur of fittings, camera flashes, and carefully rehearsed smiles. Every morning, Lily received a new schedule from Daniel's assistant luncheons, charity teas, and press photos. Her life, once quiet and ordinary, now revolved around the public image of a man she barely knew. At first, she played along with mechanical precision. Smile, nod, hold his arm. But slowly, something changed. She began to notice the small things, the way Daniel's expression softened when he looked at children running past during an event, the rare moments when his laughter sounded real, not rehearsed. Yet he remained guarded, as if every word had been weighed before leaving his lips. Their second major event together was a board dinner at the penthouse of one of Daniel's investors. The evening air smelled of expensive wine and tension. Lily's heels clicked against the marble floor as they entered. Conversations hushed for a brief second before resuming in polite tones. Daniel leaned close and whispered, "Remember, you are not just my date tonight. You are my equal. Speak when you have something worth saying." She smiled nervously. "What if I say the wrong thing?" He looked down at her, eyes glinting with mischief. "Then say it beautifully." For a moment, she forgot that everything between them was written in ink and bound by rules. The dinner began. Lily sat beside Daniel, across from the board members. They discussed profits, marketing projections, and global partnerships. It was a world far from hers. When a conversation turned toward event design, she hesitated before speaking up. "Sometimes people do not remember the details of a decoration," she said softly. "They remember how it made them feel. That is what makes an event successful." The table fell silent. One of the directors chuckled. "And you are—" Daniel's voice cut through like a blade, steady, commanding. "The person who just summed up my company's entire philosophy." A few guests laughed politely. The director looked embarrassed. But Daniel's gaze on Lily lingered for a second longer than it should have. Under the table, her hands trembled. It was not fear. It was something dangerously close to pride. After dinner, they stepped onto the balcony for air. The city stretched beneath them, glittering and endless. Daniel loosened his tie. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Even after insulting your investors?" she teased. "They needed it," he said simply. "They forget that behind every contract, there are people." She looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "You sound like someone who still cares." He met her gaze. "I do. I just learned to hide it." Quote. For a long moment they said nothing. The distance between them felt smaller than the night air. Then, unexpectedly, thunder rumbled somewhere over the river. Lily smiled. "Looks like rain again." Daniel tilted his head toward the door. "Come inside before it starts." But before they could move, the first drops began to fall, soft and cold. Lily laughed, lifting her face to the sky. Too late. Her hair dampened instantly, curls sticking to her neck. Daniel watched her quietly, something unreadable flickering across his expression. Then, without a word, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She looked up at him. "You did not have to." "I wanted to," he said. For the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man behind the control, the one who had once chosen to help a stranger at a wedding just because he could not stand to see her small. Back in the car, silence filled the space between them. The windows fogged slightly from the rain. "Daniel," she said quietly. "Why me?" He glanced at her, then looked away. "Because you are not afraid to be real. Everyone else pretends even when they are not being paid for it." Lily looked out the window, her breath ghosting on the glass. "That is ironic. Coming from the man who hired someone to pretend." He smiled faintly. "Touché. Go." A beat passed, and she added, "You know, sometimes I forget that we are pretending too." "Then I am doing my job right," he said. But his tone had softened. The next day, a photograph of them appeared on a business magazine's website, Daniel Hayes and his new partner leaving the investor dinner under a shared umbrella. The comments were merciless. Some praised the mystery woman's natural charm. Others called her the charity project of a billionaire. Lily read them in her tiny apartment, her chest tight. She had never cared what strangers thought before, but now every word felt personal. When she arrived at Hayes' events that afternoon, Daniel was already waiting in the conference room. "Ignore the noise," he said calmly, sliding his phone across the table. "I shut down the thread." "You should not have to do that for me," she said. "I did not do it for you," he replied. "I did it because they disrespected someone under my protection." "Under your protection," she repeated, half amused, half frustrated. "You make it sound like I am part of a deal." Quote. He looked straight at her. "Aren't you?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the room. Lily stood, gathering her things. "Maybe I was wrong to sign that contract." Daniel's voice was low. "Maybe I was wrong to think you could handle the truth about this world." Her pulse jumped, anger and confusion mixing inside her. "You mean your world, the one where feelings are bad investments?" He did not answer. She left the office before he could stop her. the door closing softly behind her. That night, Lily sat on her couch, still in her work clothes, staring at the rain streaking down the window. Her phone vibrated once, then again. Daniel Hayes calling. She let it ring until the screen went dark. Somewhere in the city, Daniel stood by his window, phone in hand, watching the same storm. Neither of them said it aloud, but both knew the pretending had already stopped feeling like an act. The rain did not stop that night. It poured until dawn, washing the city in silver streaks. Lily hardly slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face cold, unreadable, yet somehow hurt. By morning, her apartment felt too small, too quiet. She made coffee that went cold untouched. At 8:30, her phone buzzed again. Daniel Hayes calling. She stared at the screen for a long time before answering. His voice was calm, but softer than usual. "Miss Turner, you did not come in today." "I thought I might take a day off," she said. There was a pause. "You do not have to quit because of last night." "I did not quit," she replied. "But I also do not want to keep pretending everything is fine." He sighed quietly. "Then come to the office. No cameras, no crowd, just coffee." Something in his tone made her agree. When she arrived, the building was half empty, unusually quiet for a weekday. Daniel was alone in his office, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He gestured toward the small sitting area near the window. "Sit," he said simply. "I owe you an apology." She raised an eyebrow. "You actually admit to being wrong?" "Occasionally," he said with a faint smile. "You were right last night. I treat everything like a transaction because that is how I learned to survive. But you do not play by those rules, and it unsettles me." Lily looked at him, unsure how to respond. "You do not have to explain. I want to," he said firmly. "Because if I do not, you will walk out that door and never come back." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a single event invitation, an upcoming charity auction hosted by his company. "I want you there," he said. "But not because of the contract. I want you to design it." Her eyes widened. "You mean the decor?" "Yes. The theme, the layout, everything. You said people remember how an event makes them feel. I want this one to make them believe again." She hesitated. "Daniel, that is not what our deal was." He looked straight at her. "Maybe it is time to change the deal." Over the next week, Lily threw herself into the project. She worked late at the office, sketching designs, picking colors, studying the layout of the venue. Daniel visited occasionally, watching from a distance. He never interfered but always stayed long enough to offer quiet encouragement. "You have an eye for emotion," he said one evening, as she adjusted the lighting plan. She smiled faintly. "That is the first compliment you have given without a hidden lesson." Quote, "Then, I must be improving," he said. The night before the event, Lily found herself alone in the ballroom. The chandeliers were dimmed, the tables set, and soft music echoed in the empty space. She stood in the center, looking around with quiet pride. Daniel appeared behind her, his footsteps muffled by the carpet. "You transformed this place," he said. She turned. "You sound surprised." "I'm impressed," he corrected. She laughed softly. "That might be a first." He stepped closer. "You know, for someone who claims to hate pretense, you are remarkably good at making things beautiful." "That is different," she said. "This is about creating moments that feel real." "And do any of our moments feel real?" he asked quietly. Her breath caught. For a second, the world shrank to the space between them. "Sometimes," she said finally, "and that is what scares me." Before either could say more, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. "Excuse me," he muttered, walking away to take the call. Lily turned back to the stage lights, unaware that the conversation on the other end would change everything. The next evening, the charity auction was in full swing. Guests filled the room, music swelled, and flashbulbs popped. Daniel and Lily greeted people together, their chemistry effortless, almost natural. But as the night went on, Lily noticed Daniel's expression, shifting, his usual calm replaced by something tense. During the auction break, she pulled him aside. "What is wrong?" He hesitated before answering. "Someone leaked our contract." His stomach dropped. "What?" "An anonymous email sent to the board. The exact terms, your pay, everything." "Daniel, that makes it look like I paid you to play girlfriend," he finished grimly. "Which technically I did." Her eyes burned. "You said this was about helping each other, about trust." "I know," he said quietly. "But this is how my world works. They twist everything." "Then maybe your world is broken," she whispered. He looked at her, guilt flickering behind his composure. "I will fix it." Quote. Before she could respond, someone called his name from the stage. He turned away, leaving her in the crowd of flashing lights and murmurs. Later that night, after the event ended, Lily walked through the now empty ballroom. The flowers she had arranged still glowed softly under the dim lights, but the beauty of it all felt hollow. Daniel found her standing near the exit, coat in hand. "You should not leave like this," he said. "Why not?" she asked. "The contract is over. So is the pretending." He stepped closer. "It does not have to be." She shook her head. "It was never real, Daniel, not for you." Quote. He opened his mouth to speak, but she was already walking toward the door. When it closed behind her, the echo lingered. Daniel stood there alone, surrounded by the event she had created, the most honest thing he had ever been part of, and for the first time, he realized what it felt like to lose something that had never officially belonged to him. Outside, the night air was cold. Lily tightened her coat around her and whispered to herself, "No more pretending." But deep down, she knew the hardest part had just begun, the part where walking away felt like the biggest lie of all. 2 days passed since the charity auction. The story had already made its way through every social feed, business page, and gossip blog in the city. CEO Daniel Hayes pays woman to pose as his girlfriend. The headlines were merciless. Lily tried to stay offline, but it did not matter. Her phone buzzed with messages from people she barely remembered. Some offered pity, others wanted interviews. She turned off the notifications, closed the curtains, and sat in silence. Every corner of her apartment reminded her of him. The coat he had lent her still hung by the door. The business card still lay on the table. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door halfway. Daniel stood there, unshaven, holding a paper bag and 2 coffees. "I figured you would not answer my calls," he said quietly. "You figured right," she replied. "I just wanted to talk," he said. Lily hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. He entered, setting the coffees on the table. "The board is investigating the leak. Someone wanted to damage my reputation and they used you to do it. Then you should be talking to your lawyers, not me." "I already did," he said, "but that is not why I am here." "Then why?" she asked. Daniel looked at her, his voice steady but soft. "Because I hate the idea that you think I used you. That night, everything I said about believing in you, it was real." She folded her arms. "You paid me to stand beside you. Every moment since that first night was part of a deal." He stepped closer. "Not every moment." "Daniel, stop." Her voice cracked slightly. "Do not turn this into something it was not." Quote. He paused, then nodded slowly. "All right, but let me help you clear your name. I will release a statement saying the contract was strictly professional. That will only make it worse," she said bitterly. "It will sound like you are protecting your company, not the truth." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Then tell me what I can do." Lily looked at him, exhaustion etched in her eyes. "You cannot fix this with money or statements. Just let it end." Daniel's shoulders dropped. He nodded once, as if accepting a sentence he knew he deserved. "If that is what you want." She said nothing. He left quietly, the door clicking shut behind him. The following week felt like a blur. Lily picked up small design jobs, nothing glamorous, just enough to stay afloat. But the whispers followed her. Clients canceled last minute. Invitations disappeared. Meanwhile, Daniel faced his own storm. The leak had triggered a board inquiry, questioning his leadership and judgment. His investors threatened to withdraw unless he corrected the company's image. At a press conference, Daniel stood before flashing cameras. The air was heavy, the questions sharp. "Mr. Hayes, was Miss Turner hired to act as your romantic partner?" He hesitated, then said evenly, "Miss Turner was a consultant under temporary contract. But she was never anyone's prop. She is talented, professional, and undeserving of what has happened." A reporter shouted, "So you deny having a personal relationship?" Daniel paused again, his gaze steady. "I will not deny that she made me see the world differently. If that counts as personal, then yes, it was." The room went silent. The headlines the next day called it a CEO's confession. That evening, Lily watched the broadcast alone on her couch. His voice through the screen sounded different, less controlled, more human. She felt her chest tighten. He had risked his reputation again. For her. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number read, "Tomorrow, Grand Metropolitan Ballroom. 7 o'clock. One last chance to set things right." She stared at it for a long time, unsure if it was another trap or a goodbye. The next evening she went. The ballroom was dark except for soft amber lights and a trail of candles leading to the center of the floor. Daniel stood there, no tie, no cameras, just him. "Before you say anything," he began, "I did not invite the press. This is between us." Lily's voice was cautious. "What is all this?" He took a step closer. "You once said people remember how a place makes them feel. I want you to remember this one. Not the headlines, not the rumors, just this." Quote. She looked around, realizing the setup mirrored the exact design she had created for the auction, the same lights, same flowers, but empty of guests. Daniel continued, "I rebuilt it because I destroyed what it meant for you, and I need to fix that." "Why, Daniel?" she asked softly. "Because you were never just part of a deal," he said. "You were the first thing that made me stop pretending." Her breath caught. "You cannot say things like that." "I have to," he said. "I do not expect you to forgive me, but I will not lie anymore. You changed me, Lily. And if I lose everything because of that, then maybe I finally earned something real." For a moment neither moved. The sound of the rain outside was the only thing between them. Then Daniel reached into his pocket and placed something on the table nearby, the small silver ring from their original contract shoot, now polished and reset with a single stone. "No contracts," he said quietly. "No conditions. Just a chance to start again." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "You do not know if I can trust you again." He nodded slowly. "Then do not trust me yet. Just let me prove I am worth trusting." As she turned to leave, she stopped at the doorway and looked back. "You rebuilt all this? Just to apologize?" He smiled faintly. "No. I rebuilt it so you would know I remember what mattered to you." Lily's voice softened. "That is the first honest thing you have said since the day we met." "And maybe," he said, "it is the first thing I have meant." She stood there a moment longer, then walked back slowly toward the candlelight, her steps echoing against the marble. For the first time, neither of them pretended. Lily did not remember exactly how long she stood there, only that the silence between them felt like something fragile and alive. The soft music in the empty ballroom drifted through the air, the kind of song meant for people who were learning how to forgive. Daniel watched her carefully, afraid to speak first. His voice, when it finally came, was quiet. "You do not have to say anything now." Quote. She looked down at the ring he had placed on the table, the metal catching the candlelight. "You rebuilt this entire place to say sorry. That is not normal." "I was not trying to be normal," he replied. "I was trying to be honest." Lily turned slowly toward him. "Do you really think honesty can undo the damage? People still believe I was just your prop." Daniel's expression darkened. "They can believe what they want. I only care what you believe." Her voice trembled. "I want to believe you, Daniel. But every time I start to, something reminds me of who you are, of what this all began as." He took a step forward but stopped short. "Then let me show you who I am now." Over the next few days, Daniel did not call or push for answers. Instead, he acted quietly. Hayes Events released an official statement withdrawing all defamation claims against the media, accepting responsibility for the misunderstanding, and clearing Lily's name entirely. He even redirected one of the company's largest contracts to a small independent design studio under her name. The news spread quickly. For the first time, the comments online were kind. He stood up for her. "Maybe this CEO is not the villain we thought." When Lily read the articles, her hands shook. It was the first time she had seen her name in print without shame attached to it. That afternoon, a delivery arrived at her apartment, a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a short handwritten note. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for another beginning. D." She read it 3 times before setting it down. Her heart felt heavier than before, not lighter. 3 days later, she visited the company for the first time since everything had fallen apart. The receptionist looked startled when she entered, but she smiled politely. "Mr. Hayes is in the main conference room." Lily walked down the long hallway, each step echoing softly. Daniel was there, standing near a whiteboard full of sketches and plans. He turned when he heard her. "I did not think you would come," he said. "I did not think I would either," she replied. He gestured toward the table. "I was just reviewing proposals for the new foundation we are launching, a non-profit division that funds community events. It was your idea, actually." She blinked. "My idea? You said people remember how a place makes them feel. I want to build events that make people feel seen, not sold to. I want to build something real." Lily studied him. There was no arrogance in his tone, No trace of the man who used to measure everything in return and reputation. "You really changed," she said softly. He nodded. "You changed me." "I am only trying to keep up." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt calmer, as if both had finally stopped running from what had always been there. Later that evening, Daniel suggested they visit one of the event sites near the riverfront. The city lights shimmered on the water as they walked side by side. "I forgot how beautiful it looks from here," Lily said. "I used to see it only as property value," he admitted. "Now I see it as potential for people to breathe." She smiled faintly. "That is progress." "Small steps," he said, "but it feels right." They stood in silence, the wind brushing against them. Then Daniel spoke again. "Do you ever think about that night at the wedding?" She laughed quietly. "How could I forget? You were a complete stranger pretending to rescue me. And you let me," he said. "I let you because I was tired of being invisible," she answered. "You just happened to be there at the right time." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Then maybe all of this happened because we were both pretending to be strong until someone else noticed." Her chest tightened at his words. He was not wrong. The following morning, Lily woke to another headline. This time it was about Daniel's resignation from the Hayes Events Board. "Daniel Hayes steps down to launch independent foundation." She read it twice, disbelief mixing with pride. He had walked away from everything that once defined him. Her phone buzzed with a message from him. "The first project launches next month. I would like you to lead it." She typed back slowly. "Are you sure that is wise?" His reply came instantly. "It is not about wise anymore. It is about right." When they met again at the new office, a modest space filled with sketches, plants, and sunlight, Daniel looked more at peace than she had ever seen him. "You really did it," she said, glancing around. "No marble floors, no golden logos." He smiled. "I told you. I want to build something real." Lily nodded, then looked at him. "So where do I fit into this real thing you are building?" He hesitated, searching her face. "Anywhere you want to." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "That is not a business answer." "It is not a business question," he said. There it was again, that quiet sincerity that disarmed her every time. For a moment, she thought about everything they had survived, the lies, the contract, the storm that had nearly ruined them both. Somehow, against all logic, it had brought them here. As they stood near the window overlooking the city, Daniel turned to her. "You know, I still have that first contract framed in my office, a reminder of what not to do." She smiled. "Maybe you should burn it." He shook his head. "No, I like remembering where it started. Sometimes the wrong beginning leads to the right ending." Lily looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then maybe we are finally at the right part." He nodded once, his gaze soft but sure. "If you want it to be, yes." Outside, the city lights began to glow again. And for the first time, the silence between them did not feel fragile. It felt like peace, the kind that comes only after everything false has fallen away. The following month arrived faster than either of them expected. The first project of Daniel's new foundation, a community event called Light Up the City, was set to take place at the same riverfront where they had stood weeks before. The plan was simple but meaningful. An open-air evening festival featuring local artists, food stalls, and a memorial wall where people could write messages of hope. It was the kind of event that Lily had once only dreamed of, designing something that mattered. In the days leading up to it, she worked tirelessly, sketching layouts, organizing volunteers, and meeting with vendors. Daniel was always nearby, but careful not to overstep. He no longer played the role of a boss giving orders. He simply asked, "What do you need?" One evening, as they reviewed lighting setups under the half-finished canopy, Lily said softly, "You could have hired anyone for this." "Why me?" Daniel glanced at her, his voice calm but warm. "Because you see things I never did. You see people. You make them feel seen." She smiled faintly. "And what do you see, Daniel?" He paused before answering. "I see the woman who taught me that pretending and surviving are not the same thing." For a moment she had no words. Then she looked back at the glowing lanterns. "You are getting better at saying things you mean." He smiled. "I had a good teacher." The festival day arrived. By sunset, the riverfront was alive with sound, laughter, guitar music, the hum of the crowd. Strings of lights crisscrossed above the open square, and soft reflections shimmered on the water. Lily walked through the crowd with a clipboard in her hand, giving last-minute directions to volunteers. Every few steps, someone stopped her to thank her for the event. She tried to hide her smile, but pride glowed quietly beneath her calm. From across the crowd, Daniel watched her. For the first time in years, he felt no need to control anything. The world moved as it should, and she was at the center of it. When their eyes met, he raised his hand slightly. She walked over. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like I am finally where I belong," she said. "For once, everything feels real." "Then we did something right," he said. As night deepened, the event reached its highlight. Hundreds of people gathered near the memorial wall, each holding a small candle. The idea was simple: to honor the people or moments that had kept them going through difficult times. Lily took the microphone to introduce the ceremony. Her voice carried gently over the speakers. "Tonight is not about profit or promotion. It is about light, about remembering that even in the darkest seasons, someone or something helped you stand again." Quote. Applause filled the air. As she stepped down from the small stage, Daniel approached her quietly. "You were perfect," he said. She smiled. "It was not about being perfect." "Exactly," he said. "That is why it was." A few minutes later, Daniel walked toward the small stage again, motioning for the crowd's attention. The music faded. "I was not planning to speak," he began, his voice steady but sincere. "But this event started because of one person's belief that feelings, not numbers, are what make something worth remembering." He looked directly at Lily. "That person is the reason you are all standing here tonight." The crowd turned toward her, and she froze, startled. Daniel continued, "A few months ago, I built a world where everything was for show. I asked someone to pretend to care about me because I did not know what real care looked like. I was wrong. She showed me that authenticity is not weakness, it is strength." He took a small step down from the stage and walked toward her, the crowd whispering softly. Lily's eyes widened. "Daniel, what are you doing?" she whispered. He smiled gently. "Finishing what we started." The lights dimmed slightly, leaving only the glow of the candles. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out the same silver ring, the one that had once been a prop, then a promise, and now something entirely different. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying through the quiet. "Lily Turner, you changed my world by refusing to be part of my lie. You taught me that love does not need contracts and truth does not need permission. So tonight, in front of all these lights that you brought to life, I am asking for one more chance, not as a deal, but as a man asking a woman he admires." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Pretend I am your date," he said softly, echoing the words that had started everything. "Just one more time. But this time, never stop pretending." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "You really remembered every word," she whispered. "I remembered everything," he said. She laughed through her tears, shaking her head. "You are impossible, Daniel Hayes." He smiled. "Then make me better." The crowd waited, holding their candles high, the flickering light reflecting in her eyes. Finally she nodded, her voice trembling but sure. "Yes, but only if you promise we never fake anything again." "I promise," he said. The crowd erupted in cheers as he slipped the ring on her finger. The sound of applause mixed with the rush of the river, the night sky above them bright with 1,000 tiny lights. Later, as the festival drew to an end, Lily stood beside Daniel watching the lanterns drift along the water. The world around them glowed in quiet celebration. She whispered, "You really rebuilt everything, Daniel. But this time, not for appearances, for purpose." He nodded, looking out at the river. "And for love," he said. She smiled. "Real love." He took her hand, and together they watched the lights float downstream, proof that even the smallest flame could turn into something that lasted. For once, there were no roles to play, no secrets to hide, and no pretending left to do. Only two people standing side by side, exactly where they were meant to be. The following morning, sunlight spilled across the quiet riverfront. The lanterns from the night before still drifted on the water, their flames dim but alive. The city had returned to its usual rhythm, but for Daniel and Lily, everything had changed. Lily stood by the window of their small new office, watching the early joggers pass. On her desk sat a stack of thank you letters from the festival's attendees, handwritten notes filled with gratitude and hope. Some thanked her for giving them a reason to believe in kindness again. Others thanked her for reminding them that honesty could still be beautiful. She ran her fingers over the papers, smiling softly. Behind her, Daniel entered, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You have been standing there for 15 minutes, he said. "Are you counting the lanterns again?" She turned toward him, amused. "I am reading these letters. They make everything worth it." He set the coffees down. "You made it worth it, Lily. Without you, I would still be hiding behind numbers and contracts. She tilted her head. And now? Now, he said, I just want to build things that last. A few weeks later, their foundation officially launched its second major event, a program designed to fund creative projects from underprivileged communities. At the press conference, Daniel stood beside Lily, both dressed simply but elegantly. Reporters filled the room, expecting corporate statements. But what they heard instead was a quiet story about two people who stopped pretending. Daniel began. We are not here to talk about profits or expansion. We are here to talk about rebuilding trust. Trust between companies and people, between strangers who decided to see each other for who they are, not what they could gain. He looked at Lily before continuing. This foundation began as a mistake. But that mistake led to honesty, and honesty built this. So if anyone asks how we met, I will still tell them the truth. I saw her standing alone at a wedding, and she looked like someone who deserved a better story. The crowd smiled. Cameras flashed, but for once, neither of them cared. Afterward, as they left the stage, Lily whispered, You realize you just turned our entire mess into a love story in front of the press? Daniel grinned. It was always a love story. We just took the long way to find it. That evening, they returned to the riverfront, now quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. The same spot where everything had started, the same skyline, the same soft breeze that carried a memory in every sound. Lily leaned on the railing, her hair moving gently in the wind. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not said that line at the wedding? He chuckled. Pretend I am your date? Yes, that one. He thought for a moment. If I had not said it, I would have walked away and missed everything that followed. I would have stayed the man who thought appearances were enough. So no, I do not regret saying it. Do you? She looked up at him. No, because even though it began as a lie, it led me to the truth. Daniel reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The truth that what? That love is not about pretending to be perfect, she said. It is about showing up when everything falls apart. Quote. He smiled, his voice almost a whisper. Then I guess we finally got it right. They stayed there until the sky darkened. A few of the old lanterns floated past, glowing faintly. Lily pointed to one drifting near the edge of the dock. That one is still burning. Stubborn, Daniel said. Like us, she replied. He laughed quietly. If you had told me a year ago that I would be here, watching candles with you, I would have called it impossible. Maybe impossible things are the ones worth believing in, she said. They fell into silence again, the kind that did not need to be filled. Months later, their foundation's success became the subject of countless articles. But to them, it was never about the headlines. It was about the people who came to their events, the children who smiled during art workshops, the volunteers who said they finally felt seen. Every so often, someone would approach them and ask, How did you two meet? Daniel always answered with the same soft grin. At a wedding. She was sitting alone. Quote, Lily would roll her eyes, laughing every time, but she never corrected him, because that was the truth, the kind that no longer needed defending. On the anniversary of their first encounter, Daniel organized something unexpected. That night, when Lily arrived at the riverfront, the path was lined with small white lights. In the center stood a single table, covered in flowers, and two simple plates of dinner. She stopped, stunned. Daniel, what is this? He smiled. No board members, no contracts, no headlines, just us, the way it should have been from the start. She sat down, shaking her head but smiling. You really cannot stop with the grand gestures, can you? Not when they remind me of you, he said. After dinner, he took her hand and stood, guiding her toward the edge of the pier. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, not for show this time, not for a deal. I already asked you once to pretend, he said softly. Now I am asking for something real. No cameras, no contracts, just a promise to keep building this life together, one honest day at a time. Quote. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, the same one that had begun as a prop, now gleaming under the night sky as something entirely real. As they stood there, the lanterns floated once more across the river, lighting up the water like stars. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder and said, You know, some people call us lucky. Daniel smiled. Maybe. Or maybe we were just two people brave enough to stop pretending. Quote. The wind carried their laughter across the water, soft and steady, as the last lantern drifted away, its light still burning, just like the love that had started with one impossible sentence. Pretend I am your date. And for once, It was not pretending at all.